Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today we've got 5 must-start running backs here in Week 9 action. It has become a pit of misery, a wasteland every year, and right now we are starting to get absolutely hammered with the running back injuries to very key and significant players. We're down Derrick Henry. If you haven't heard that news already, then I guess you should turn your phone on, check out social media. But man, that was a killer injury. Derrick Henry's going to be out 6 to 10 weeks now, and we are more desperate than ever with both him and Christian McCaffrey, two of arguably the top 3 best running backs, no matter which way you look at it, are out and not available for our fantasy lineup. So there's going to be a group of players who last week might not have found very much utility in this video because they had great running back depth and weren't searching for lower end options who can be nice lineup streams. But now this week, you're without the arguably best player in fantasy over the past 8 weeks of time because of his dominance and all that stuff. Now you're in the same boat as everyone else. Christian McCaffrey owners feel your pain here. Dalvin Cook owners for a while this season have went through the struggles of all of these running back injuries and whatnot. And here we are. So Adrian Peterson has just been signed to the practice squad for the Tennessee Titans the day prior to me filming this episode. So obviously you've got somewhat of an idea of how that Tennessee backfield is going to start to shape out here. Jeremy McNichols is also going to have a role in the receiving game for that team, and we'll see ultimately who takes over as the lead back. I assume AP will be the early down player for this offense if he is ultimately brought to the active roster off the practice squad and that track progresses forward here. But nonetheless, we've got some players here that hopefully can serve your lineup some purpose, that is, and help you get through this tough Week 9 stretch where we've got 4 teams also on bye week on top of all these injuries. So with that being said, I'm going to stop yapping. Let's hit the intro and get into 5 players who can potentially save your lineups this week and fill that running back void. Alrighty, one more quick thing I forgot to mention in the intro is that if you play daily fantasy sports or like to make player prop bets, we've got the perfect app or website to go check out for yourselves. ThriveFantasy.com is one of our great partners here on the SFS channel. And for new users who sign up for an account on Thrive and use promo code SIZZLE, when you deposit between $10 and $100, they will give you a 100% deposit bonus on them for signing up and using that promo code, and then we will turn around and give you a free month of SFS Gold, which is our exclusive membership service here on the SFS channel. We give you our weekly positional rankings for quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and defenses, in addition to getting access to our private direct messages, our DMs in our community Discord server, where you'll be able to ask us your questions and we'll set your lineups for you every single week because you are a member of SFS Gold. So myself or Eric, again, we'll get back to every single one of you who is a subscriber of that feature. It's just over $1 a week if you weren't to take advantage of the promo code with Thrive Fantasy right now. But again, another opportunity for you to do that, and I'll be posting my Thrive Fantasy picks every single week. We've made $100 here this week. Well, technically we made $80. We put 20 into the pot this week, walked away with 100. So we're up $80 here on the SFS channel. So that's exciting news, and we can start using those winnings to increase our wagers on every performance. But here we go. Michael Carter, our first must-start player this week. What a game. What a breakout performance from Michael Carter. The skill set that we at the channel here raved about this offseason in the pre-draft process, it was on full display. It took Mike White getting into this offense for Michael Carter to finally see a hefty involvement in the receiving game. He had 9 grabs, 95 yards, so nearly hit that century mark on or through the air as a pass catcher. And on top of that, he also had a very, very productive game on the ground, even had an 8-yard rushing touchdown. So he basically checked all the boxes in Week 8 against the Cincinnati Bengals in what was expected to be a relatively underrated matchup in difficulty because Cincinnati has been quite solid against the run game this season. Michael Carter came in here and showed us why he was one of the Jets' top priority picks this offseason and in the draft. Michael Carter can do the same here on a short week on Thursday Night Football against the Indianapolis Colts. It's not an overly favorable matchup, but Michael Carter showed us flashes and reasons why he should be a weekly RB2 lineup consideration from here on out in PPR formats. He's going to be catching passes out of the backfield. You see guys like Mike White come in here. They're backup quarterbacks. They're not the most talented talented players in terms of the overall capability their arms have of making wild throws and slinging the rock downfield, they're check down Charlies more often than not, and that's okay. We love that as fantasy managers because that gives us a heck of a lot of points very easily, very quickly from our running backs. You see it with Geno Smith when DJ Dallas and Alex Collins were just spilling out of the backfield, catching balls and running for 10, 15 yards in open space. It's fantastic. It's free fantasy points. Michael Carter was doing that all day long against the Bengals, and I expect him to do much of the same here against the Colts. Now, they do have some solid linebackers, might be able to track Michael Carter a little bit better in the open field, but this is an elusive player, an explosive back. He's going to come out here and make some plays. I'm trusting Michael Carter with the start here in Week 9 after an impressive breakout performance in Week 8 against the Bengals. Jordan Howard. This one goes two ways here. If you're desperate, you're starting Jordan Howard, obviously, at the running back 2 or even flex spot. As again, we're very RB needy this week. But if you are very, very desperate, a step beyond desperate, you could probably also get away maybe with starting Boston Scott. Both players had 2 touchdowns for a combined total of 4 in last week's matchup against the Detroit Lions. That's not something I expect week over week from Boston Scott. That's why Jordan Howard makes the list over Boston Scott. Now, again, both players have a very nice matchup against the Los Angeles Chargers this week. Those were the 2 players involved on the goal line. That's why they make this list over Kenneth Gainwell. The reasoning for Jordan Howard being the priority here is that he is the more goal line typical back than Boston Scott. Boston Scott's more of a scat back. He's a smaller player, used more in the passing game. Jordan Howard is the big bruiser, the battering ram who heads forward, goes north and south, and usually it's never south. He is always seeming to find ways to gather positive yardage. As a Packer fan, I have watched a lot of Jordan Howard throughout his time with the Chicago Bears earlier on in his career. He's a very impressive player. I'm surprised he has not been on a roster to this point in the season up until last week. He was on the Eagles practice squad throughout, played for the Dolphins through stints last year, and then spent some time with the Eagles again last season, in addition to, this is like his 3rd stint with Philadelphia now. Jordan Howard's a talented player. That's the takeaway here. Playing one of the worst run stops in the league with the Los Angeles Chargers. They are the 29th ranked unit against the run, so meaning they give up a lot of points to fantasy running backs. If the Eagles get down the goal line, watch out. Jordan Howard's going to get some opportunities. Now, none of these Eagles running backs were catching passes last week. That's a small red flag here. But what we'll take is the matchup they're getting as pure rushing threats, and that's what I like about Howard this week. Again, in super, super desperate situations, Boston Scott could have some lineup utility here, but as, again, a player of smaller stature, a player who is less powerful in his ability to drive defenders forward, I would expect Howard to command the larger majority of the goal line opportunities over Scott here in Week 9. Elijah Mitchell, someone who at this point has my trust as a steady running back to play. Another player who does not really catch passes, and that's what keeps him from being a top-end fantasy running back or in the RB1 discussion, despite the last 2 weeks, him having over 100 yards rushing back-to-back and he had 1 rushing touchdown in each performance. Mitchell's in an offense that's very, very beneficial to fantasy running backs. The 49ers are frequently producing on a year-to-year basis because of Kyle Shanahan's system very quality numbers at this spot. But Elijah Mitchell's a little bit less of an explosive athlete than a Raheem Mostert, than even, potentially JaMychal Hasty. We've seen Jerick McKinnon make big plays in this offense before. Elijah Mitchell can get out in space and he can move, but he's a lot more of a power back and a brute force runner than an elusive player or someone who's going to just jet out here and score huge rushing plays. Now, he has had explosive rushes so far this season, but again, the point being here, you're looking for a lot more of your upside from Mitchell on the goal line and what he's doing there, running defenders over in short yardage situations. Mitchell, again, he's had back-to-back weeks over 100 rushing yards, so he's getting attempts, 18 carries in both of those games, but beware, he's not catching balls. That's just one thing to expect to not be a part of his situation. He's only got 4 receptions in 5 starts this season, so something to take a look at there. But Mitchell and this 49ers offense, it has less to do with the matchup against the Cardinals, who are right above the middle of the pack right now. They are basically the middle of the pack of the 17th ranked unit against the fantasy running back. But with the lack of availability and lack of elite options we have here in Week 9, Mitchell, for almost any roster he's on, becomes a borderline must-start player, even in the best of situations where you might find yourself with 3 I don't know how at this point in a 10 or 12 man league you would have 4 starting quality level running back players. But again, Mitchell probably a must start for almost every team this week. Myles Gaskin taking on the Houston Texans, another option I like, particularly in PPR formats, just like a Michael Carter. Where has Myles Gaskin done most of his damage this season? It's been in the receiving game. He's got a 10-catch performance against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that was one of his best games on the season because when they get him out in space and use him as a versatile and dynamic player, he's able to get the job done at a more effective level. This Houston Texans team is one that I think the Dolphins can come out here and have more control over this football game than they've had over basically any other contest so far this year. That's another reason I like this matchup. Houston's only the 22nd ranked team against the run, so there's opportunity for Gaskin to be productive on the ground in addition to anything he might be able to do through the air. He hasn't been consistent. I'm still not a Gaskin fan long-term this year, but through the lens of just Week 9, I can get by starting Myles Gaskin as a middle to lower end RB2 option or potentially a flex play, again, in those PPR leagues if you don't have a wide receiver that's upside you like better. And then finally here, this is one where the crop was just so thin this week. There's a fine line between the players that are weekly must-starts and then the players who are below that bar that you have some level of questionability with their lineup status on a week-to-week basis. There were our clear and obvious stardom, sit and forget type players. And then there was a large crop of players who aren't in that range of just simple sit and forget options in your lineups on a week-to-week basis. And Chase Edmonds and James Conner, who we're both going to talk about here, aren't players that I feel like are going to go to the moon this week. But I think you can expect respectable production out of them. And this is probably, of the 5 players on the list, the 2 I'm least excited about. Again, now 2 of these, technically this is more than just 5 players because this is the second package deal we've had here. But this is probably the least high upside you're going to get out of any of these players this week. The reason I like Chase Edmonds and James Conner here against San Francisco, who is in the dead middle of the pack, 16th overall in terms of their points allowed to the running back position in fantasy, is because of the injury to Kyler Murray. I think that's going to force the Cardinals to become more running dependent, whether or not Kyler's able to go in this game. And the expectation right now is that he's going to be injured and banged up for 1 to 3 weeks here. And there's been no official decision on his availability at the time we're posting this video for Kyler Murray's health and status for Week 9 here. But let's just play hypotheticals. Let's say that Kyler Murray does suit up. They're not going to be able to move the pocket as effectively with Kyler's ankle being under duress and being less than 100%, and they're not going to be able to run a lot of the higher physically demanding plays, bootlegs, having Kyler Murray just be Kyler Murray and the quick twitch athlete that he is, scattering all over the field and breaking sacks and all that great stuff. He is going to be confined a lot more extremely inside the pocket and asked to be a pocket passer. That doesn't bode well because that's not his skill set. They're going to have to rely on the ground game more. That means more touches for these running backs, less touches in particular for Murray himself, which is very, very important here because Arizona, this was a staggering fact to me. They're 3rd in rushing attempts, but a lot of that is because they're divvying up touches so evenly between Edmonds and Conner, and then Kyler Murray is almost matching them as well with his attempts on his own. These are very talented backs. Chase Edmonds, I think, has the better bet here, and we'll get to the potential of a backup option in the Arizona Cardinals offense this week in just a second here. But I like Chase Edmonds just a little bit more because, and I guess this is for scenario 2 as well, if there is a backup quarterback in play here, Chase Edmonds is the player that catches passes. And if you see this Cardinals offense at less than peak efficiency, it's more likely than not that the amount of goal line opportunities James Conner can see and the amount of times that this team can drive the ball down to the 1-yard line is probably going to be reduced as well, which is going to hinder Conner's ability to be a productive player when his outcome every week is so touchdown dependent. So that's why I like Chase Edmonds just a little bit more this week. So into scenario 2 here for the Cardinals is you draw Colt McCoy, and Kyler Murray is held out of this game completely. Going back to, now Colt McCoy is a respected backup in this league. He's been around a couple different teams. He's had starting stints for, Washington. I believe he started a couple games for, was it the Giants last season? He's been around. He's been around for a while now. He's been playing for, he's on, his 2nd or 3rd contract at this point. He's a player that can push the ball downfield somewhat and is a little bit less confined to checking the football down than some other backups are, like, for example, Mike White, who we talked about earlier, who was impressive in his first start, but that's besides the point here. Backup quarterbacks like to rely more passing to the players that they see as safe options, safety valves, and dependable targets on the football field. That's tight ends and running backs. Chase Edmonds out of the backfield is going to be a very intriguing target. He's going to be someone that Colt McCoy is going to have a lot of faith, a lot of confidence, and trust in, simply checking the football down and asking him to get the work done after the catch. Against San Francisco, again, this is not a terribly easy matchup on the ground, but overall these backs are going to see more touches because they're going to be less competent and less able to pass the football downfield, especially if DeAndre Hopkins' hamstring is acting up as well. That just adds fuel to the fire here now. There is the risk of this team being potentially too one-dimensional, not being able to overcome their deficiencies, but I think that Chase Edmonds is a talented enough player, elusive enough that if you get him in space, out in the open field, he can make guys miss and make some splash plays here and there. Again, I do like Edmonds more, especially in the event that Kyler Murray is held out of this contest, because I think that means a reduced count of goal line opportunities and carries for James Conner. But overall, I think that either of them are lower-end RB2s this week if you need them to be that for you. Otherwise, Conner and Edmonds, maybe even flex-level plays in standard leagues. Otherwise, I would go Edmonds over Conner in flex situations for those PPR lineups. Alrighty, those were our 5 must-start running backs here in Week 9 fantasy football action. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave it with a like and click that subscribe button before you head on out today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you guys have any questions regarding your individual teams or matchups this week, feel free to drop those in the comment section below. Join the community Discord server and interact with other members of the SFS community who might have similar questions or answers for you as well if we're not able to get back to you and help you guys out this week. So, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.